Chinese horror movies suck. That's just a matter of fact. And unless things change, they'll always be seen as the ridiculous, hilarious, terrible films that they are. Let's explore 5 things we can fix about Chinese horror movies that would make them instantly more appealing to both a local and international audience. Now, just a disclaimer before we begin. This is all for fun and full of hypothetical scenarios. Nothing written here is to be taken seriously or as evidence of a movement happening in the Chinese film industry. Now, this is going to be a tricky one, as these guys are the government's propaganda mouthpiece when it comes to art. But just imagine a Chinese cinema industry without this mob. Formed in April 2018, the CCP wanted to centralize film management in China, so they split up the SAPPRFT. That's the State Administration for Press, Publication, Radio, Film, and Television, and created this new department whose sole focus was just on film. No movies get approved without going through this department. Firstly, the studio needs to self-censor their scripts based on the government's film rules, and then the CFA reviews it, making suggestions along the way. But let's not kid ourselves. Those suggestions, they're more like requirements. You know how you see the Golden Dragon forming the Great Wall of China on a green background with an approval number combined with some dramatic fanfare at the start of a Chinese movie? That's the CFA's official seal of approval for the film. This also means that China does not have a classification system to regulate the ages of those who can watch them. The movies are either approved for all audiences or for no one. This means that super violent movies can be seen by children with no repercussions for the exhibitors. The China Film Administration's regulations for horror movies are the toughest in the world, and Chinese horror movies are the butt of all jokes with Chinese netizens, who label the movies as ridiculous and an offense to intelligence. Why, you ask? Because the filmmakers aren't allowed to show supernatural elements or anything with superstitions. Again, you ask, why? Well, because superstitious beliefs are taboo. They rely on the notion that there are powerful forces in the world that aren't controlled by the CCP. Believing in ghosts, spirits, and religions could undermine the citizens' faith in the party. This is how little the Chinese government views their citizens, where they think they can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality, so thus, no ghosts. And what is a horror movie without ghosts or spirits? Now, existing Chinese horror movies get around this by ending the movie in one of 3 different ways. It was all a dream for the main character, including being hypnotized. The main character is under the control of a hallucinogenic or medication that alters their perception of reality. The old Scooby-Doo trick. It's just another person in a mask or costume playing make-believe to scare the main character.
Well, well, if it isn't our old friend Bluestone the Great.
These rules also extend to foreign movies, with even innocuous titles like Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, or the family comedy Ghostbusters being banned. Thus, getting rid of the China Film Administration and implementing a proper age rating system will achieve the following things. Allow Chinese filmmakers to make movies about ghosts and spirits, giving them the license to explore their rich history of ghost stories, including movies about Ni Xiaoqian from A Chinese Ghost Story. Allowing the importing of foreign horror films legally, reducing the impact of the black market on film piracy, and introducing a steady and lucrative income stream for filmmakers and distributors who pay tax. Foster a local horror community with film events and clubs that don't need to hide their activities. And nurture a new wave of filmmakers, actors and effects crews who have the potential to take the world by storm, just as the wave of J-horror movies did in the late 90s that thrust Japanese cinema and culture into the limelight with movies like The Ring, The Grudge and Darkwater, amongst others. This is going to be a controversial point, but with the China Film Administration out of the way, it's time to start getting creative with some Chinese characters that everybody knows and loves. Recently, we've all seen the phenomenal success of the video game Black Myth Wukong, a completely original story based on the tales of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. While it draws heavy inspiration from the stories and features most of the characters Sun Wukong interacts with, the story itself is original. Now, imagine a budding filmmaker takes Sun Wukong and turns him into a horror film. It's not as far-fetched as you think, as we've seen in recent times with the proliferation of fairy tale characters into horror movie icons. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, Cinderella's Curse, The Little Mermaid, a movie about Popeye, and several movies about Mickey Mouse. Popular childhood icons turned into mass-market slasher horror movies. They might not be any good, but the novelty factor alone makes it a lucrative money spinner. With a range of staffs and magic at his disposal, Sun Wukong would make a formidable foe for a group of horny teens to take down and defeat. And then of course there would be the countless sequels, prequels, reboots, and crossover titles. Speaking of crossover titles, why stop at Sun Wukong? The legendary Naja would also make a brilliant horror movie icon, considering his character is already halfway there. Introducing Al Bing as his nemesis would make an epic movie. Or what about if Naja and Al Bing were ghost hunters fighting off the evil spirits from the Fengshen universe, with the Fengshen gods able to create various types of grotesque and demonic looking creatures for our two intrepid heroes to battle until they reach the gods themselves. Imagine the marketing opportunities. The toys, the cartoons, the sequels, the manhwa novels. Endless and creative. Now that the rulebook is out the window and creativity can reign supreme, the next point is about creating an identity for Chinese horror cinema. When we look at Asian horror cinema, we can easily stereotype films as belonging to certain countries. The white ghost with long black hair instantly reminds us of Japan, while Indonesia is known for their folklore movies that explore ancient tales of spirits that live in forests and jinns that possess the weak-willed. Thailand is great with modern horror ghost stories, while Taiwan is currently in a wave of creating movies based on real haunted locations. What can China do to create its own mark on the Asian horror cinema world? Well, the obvious subgenre was discussed in the previous point, but that's too easy and will eventually get boring. There are countless Monkey King movies already out there, and you could only imagine how many horror movies there would be if the floodgates were opened. China should explore its political past. Controversial yet potentially groundbreaking and entertaining. From the beginning with the Cultural Revolution, there could be movies about human trafficking, zombie outbreaks, or supernatural gods protecting peasants. To modern topics like June 4, 1986, the Olympic Games and the pandemic, there's a rich tapestry of stories, ideas and themes ready to be tackled with a horror lens. A movie like 28 Days Later, but based on Ground Zero Wuhan at the start of the pandemic, that could be epic. Or a found footage mockumentary style film set during the Olympic opening games ceremony at the beginning of a zombie outbreak brought on by visiting athletes competing at the games. Or perhaps even a movie about a killer panda on loan to a host country zoo who is friendly with another nation who is actively engaged in warfare with the Chinese military. Action and horror with the fun of exploring a killer animal, seen in movies like Cocaine Bear or The Red. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of existing Chinese horror movies that could be revisited and remade using this newfound freedom, but I'll cover those titles off in the fifth point. Let's be completely 100% honest. Sex sells. And sex and nudity are, or were, synonymous with horror films. China, with a population of close to 1.4 billion people, has plenty of good-looking male and female actors, models, and wannabe internet influencers who would do anything for fame. So why not play into it? As you can imagine, full frontal adult nudity is not permitted in Chinese cinema, regardless of the genre, although there have been some very rare examples, such as the 2000 film The Devil on the Doorstep, a comedy drama about the Japanese occupation of a Chinese village which features a scene of a nude woman hiding for cover, However, the movie was banned in China for other reasons, specifically for the sympathetic depiction of Japanese soldiers during World War II. So this is probably not a good example. But occasionally a nude bum might make it to the screen, such as in the 2014 horror-turned-thriller movie Inside the Girls. While you can count the amount of nude buttock cheeks on one hand. 1, 2. There are 2 buttock cheeks on screen right now. If this was an American film, you can bet that none of these girls would be wearing towels. Would it add anything to the plot of the film? Well, obviously not. But the Japanese have realized that adding smut to their splatter films is a surefire way of attracting the attention of an international audience. Of mostly perverts, but still, they have money. And at the end of the day, filmmaking is about box office and online streaming returns. The erotic horror genre might not be too popular nowadays with the proliferation of online smut being so easily accessible, but a naked pretty girl on screen makes news for all the right or wrong reasons. Point in case with the Indonesian horror film Impetigo from 2019. I first heard about this film not because it was from Joko Anwar, but because an Indonesian movie reviewer here on YouTube excitedly exclaimed that this was the first Indonesian movie in decades to feature a naked female breast, but only for the international release. The Indonesians received an edited version, but China won't need to edit movies anymore. Just slap an 18+ rating on it and let the audience decide. There are many existing Chinese tales that feature sexy male and female characters that could benefit from a relaxed sex and nudity policy. Imagine a smutty horror movie about the fox demon. Seducing her prey while in human form, luring her victims in by bathing topless in an isolated lake, and then during his moment of weakness while they're in mid-coitus, she rips open his throat with her teeth, blood spraying all over her breasts. You're imagining it now too, right? And you want to watch it, don't you? And lastly, if there's any audience more critical of Chinese horror movies, it's the local one. Try as hard as you can, but you won't be able to come up with a single example of an existing mainland Chinese horror movie that has received much, if any, international fanfare. And don't be confused with Hong Kong and Taiwanese movies. They've had no such restrictions, although things appear to be changing in Hong Kong, with the current Chinese government having a strong handle over Hong Kong culture. Back in 2020, Japanese director Norio Tsuruta, known for J-horror titles The Ring Zero and Premonition, created a film in China called The Perilous Internet Ring. It had potential, but in the end it was ruined by film regulations. However, the movie was released in several South American countries such as Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico under the title of Sadako Resurrection or The Ring Resurrection, clearly hoping the director's previous work on a Ring film and the fact that the main ghost in the movie resembles Sadako could trick an audience into paying money to watch it. It also received a belated Japanese release, where I assume the local audience just laughed the movie out of existence. The movie had a solid idea. Someone was writing an online novel, and people were receiving individual chapters of the story tailored specifically to them, with the hook that the chapter details how that person will die. In the end, it was revealed there was an AI machine creating the stories that would also send an electro wave to the reader that forces them to hallucinate their death. But imagine if the ghost that everyone saw in the film was real. A manifestation of the AI machine writing the stories, and that the two main characters had to stop both a spirit and a machine. That would have been a much better story. Perhaps would have received an international release, and if well received, would have made the locals proud of their horror industry. There are other existing Chinese horror movies that just need a slight re-edit to remove their endings. The scenes of walls of text explaining what happened in the film had nothing to do with ghosts. That would make them very marketable for an international audience. The two House That Never Dies films both end with a reveal that the main characters have been hallucinating due to other characters wanting to make them crazy. But if you remove those scenes, the movie will end with all the ghosts and spirits being real. That would be a much more satisfying ending. Additionally, the excellent movie Mortal Ouija, which has never been officially translated, is about a single mother who moves into an awesome apartment only to find it appears to be haunted. There's even a scene with a duo of ghost hunters who freak out over what they believe to be real ghosts. The movie has two endings. A real ending where it's revealed that the apartment is indeed haunted by a previous tenant, but then the movie ruins it by adding the government-approved ending, where the family of the previous tenant admit to faking the haunting so they can have their apartment back. The final scene can be removed easily, as it doesn't really flow with the rest of the film. And what you'd be left with is a genuine Chinese ghost movie, and a good one at that. Without regulations, the next wave of Chinese filmmakers can make their own versions of The Ring, The Train to Busan, Satan's Slaves, Halloween, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Smile, The Exorcist, The Night of the Living Dead, The Evil Dead, and so much more. And the world of horror cinema will be so much richer for it. I'm the Artie Dans. Thank you so much for watching this video. What did you think? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts and opinions, or what you would change about what my 5 points were. Otherwise, I hope you liked the video. Press that like button, maybe consider subscribing, and otherwise, we'll catch you next time.